Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back. It's MLB Power Rankings time. Sunday night, the Mets are slowly working their way to a victory tonight. We suspect that's going to happen. So it's going to be time to do this. I just want to start things off. Go down there, smash the subscribe button. We're looking to grow our community. I think we're at 205, 215. I can't quite remember, but every little sub counts. And if you want to keep discussing baseball throughout the week, get an idea for what I'm about and that, join the Discord. That will be in the description below. It's been an interesting week, 10 days, couple of teams making some big names for themselves, a lot of streaking going on. I think I'm going to be making a video of that during the week, so keep your eye out for that, and you'll only see it if you're subscribing. First up, number 30, we've got Kansas City Royals 1-2 against the Toronto Blue Jays, and 2-2 against Baltimore. They actually had a shot, in my opinion, to jump out of this spot, up 2 games against Baltimore early in the weekend, but then they blew the last 2. And for me, you got to win a series before you're going to come out of the last place, and they didn't. So I'm going to keep them there, at least for now, but they're barely behind this team, number 29. The Oakland A's went 0-2 against Atlanta, 1-3 against Cleveland this past week. The A's are just like the Royals, both pretty much losing all the series they play, and it's not really a lot of excitement for either of those teams. I'm not going to spend too much time on this bottom row. Bottom row, for the most part, has stayed pretty consistent, at least over the past couple of weeks. Might be jockeying here and there, but overall, if you're in the bottom row, I'm not expecting you to make any shot at playoffs whatsoever. And that brings us to Washington, went 0-3 against Miami. They actually stole a series off the struggling Brewers this weekend, so a little bit of benefit there. And at the end of the day, Washington always has some offensive capabilities, take some wins. And the Brewers not able to put up offense against them, they learned that lesson. Number 27, we got Cincinnati Reds 2-2 against Arizona, 1-2 against the division rival Cardinals. But that series against Arizona is pretty interesting. It was very close back and forth between two teams that are kind of jockeying to see if they're going to take some steps forward for the rest of the year or if it's kind of going to be another rough season. Arizona has had some streaks, and Cincinnati, as we know, has had the opposite kind of streaks, some losing streaks. But it was a good series early in the week. Number 26, dropping even further, 2-1 against San Fran, 2-2 against San Diego. So really, I dropped them, but they had a good week against their own team. But it's just when you match up against all the other teams in their division and how much distance they have to cover, if they're going to be a contender even next season, the season after that, it's not looking good for Rockies fans, in my opinion. It's going to be a long rebuild in Colorado. I know last year we kind of expected them to be more here, and they were more middle. I talked about that last week. But Rockies fans probably have a rough couple of years ahead of them. Number 25, we got Detroit Tigers, 2-0 against Pittsburgh, early 2-game series in the week. They lost a series against Toronto over the weekend. They had one good game on Saturday where they shut Toronto out and put up a couple of runs. But otherwise, on Friday and Sunday, they got shut out. And Detroit still trying to find any sort of momentum offensively, pitching. They just don't really have much consistency whatsoever. And in a division where it was pretty much up for grabs for a long portion of that, they're pretty much out of it, as a couple of the other teams have taken advantage when there was some struggling amongst what was expected to be the top. So that brings us to 24. Same spot as last week, 0-1 against Baltimore. 0-3 against the Yankees. They only had 4 games this week. They lost them all, but can't really say much because number 23, we got the same story. We got Pittsburgh Pirates 0-2 against Detroit, 0-4 against Atlanta. So combined, these guys went 0-10 in a division that they're pretty much out of at this point, but they want to compete and see who's going to be the third best team, and that you thought they were going to compete for that. Who knows? Cincinnati might make a run at it based on how these guys are playing, but not a lot going forward for these teams right now so far. Playoffs are all but a dream for pretty much this bottom 2 rows. So we're going to keep going. Number 22, we got the Baltimore Orioles, 1-0 against the Cubs. So they pick up that 1 win, and then they split the series with Kansas City. Potential almost a disaster going down 2 games early in this series. But they managed to battle back to a break-even tie. Baltimore still kind of in that position where, hey, they won the week 3-2, but they're in a division where they're going to have to start putting together some 6-0 weeks, some sweeping weeks. They need to sweep some series if we're ever going to start talking about them being playoff contenders, which is going to be the next row up in I think the furthest they've been is like 19 or so. So number 21, down a couple of spots, 2-2 against Cincinnati, 1-2 against Philly. A little bit of cooled off, and I think it comes down to run differential for this team. They just don't have a great run differential, so more nights than often, they're going to come out below. They had quite a little bit of a streak there, but they've definitely cooled off, and I think we can start putting them in the same category. I do put them on a little bit of edge against a lot of these teams below them because I think their rotation is a little bit stronger than the average, but 21 is not going to get you too much further. Number 20, we got the Chicago White Sox 1-2 against the Dodgers, 1-2 against Texas over the weekend. So the White Sox, what a disastrous season they've had, just bolted with injuries all over the place. Can't really hold them up too much longer as other teams have passed them in the division. The Twins are just making the distance between the two of them so much larger, and honestly, before we know it, June's going to be gone and the White Sox are still going to be well below 500. The run differential is atrocious. At this rate, we can't even be thinking about playoffs for them. They definitely need a streak if we're going to start to see them climb back out of it. Number 19, we got the Seattle Mariners, 2-1 against Houston, 1-2 against Boston. So they have like a 500 week, but that's not going to be good enough to get them back into the playoff conversation. They were in it early in the season, but over the past 2 months, they've really fell apart. They haven't had a very good team. Their rotation has not held it together, and their bats just inconsistent. I think having a lot of their prospects not perform to the level of expectation has really damaged their chances. And believe it or not, I believe Seattle has, it's pretty much their playoff streak is going to continue not going to the playoffs. So that sucks for the Mariners. Number 18, we got the Texas Rangers passing the Mariners 1-2 against Cleveland, and then they beat the White Sox 2-1. Passed them in the Mariners. It's the first time they had them in the power rankings this season. It's a big move because I think we start Texas down in this bottom row, so they're actually creeping their way up slowly. They've been chipping away each and every week. Now we see them in the third week, which, in my opinion, once you're in the third row, at this point in the season, playoffs are not out of the question. Sure, Texas is a little bit behind. They're below 500. Their run differential, however, is positive. And they have a lineup that, on a given night, can put up quite a few runs, and they do have a couple pitchers that can pitch some gems. Who knows what it's capable of? If they go on a good enough streak here with the extra wild card spot, they'd have to really hope a lot of teams fall apart. They still have a couple teams to hop over, but they're in the conversation, and that's all you can ask for as a Rangers fan. Number 17, we got the Miami Marlins, 3-0 against Washington, 2-1 against Texas. Their run differential ain't bad in a division that you thought they were pretty much out of it. Mets really running away with it. They've managed to keep pace with the next two teams, and those two teams have been scorching hot, which is the only reason they're still in fourth in that division. I think this is pretty much peak territory for the Miami Marlins, maybe a couple of spots, but playoffs, much like Texas, are far, far reach. Who knows? We've seen the Marlins go on a hot streak of 9+ wins already this season. If they can do it again, they'll be right back in that conversation. Number 16, we got the Cleveland Guardians, 2-1 against Texas, 3-1 against Oakland. And with the White Sox struggling, Cleveland has been the team that's really taken advantage of that, putting themselves right in that playoff race. Second in the AL Central, they're a little bit behind on Twins, but with the pitching rotation they've got and the bats have come to play, they're in there. And you got to be excited to be Cleveland Guardians fan. I had no expectations for them coming in this season, and they've performed well above mine. So they deserve a big shout out for me. Number 15, just continuing to fall, we got the LA Angels, 1-3 against Boston, 1-2 against the Mets. So after losing, 11, 12 in a row, they managed to pick up a couple of wins this week, but it's not enough because to be a playoff team, you got to win more than you lose, and that's not been the case for the Angels right now after clearing out Joe Madden. They did manage to get a win on the board, but Angels, it's just been a disaster season, and we could honestly see them fall if they don't start winning some games. Number 14, team they just lost to this week, 3-1 against the Angels, 2-1 against Seattle. Boston has found a groove after falling down to the second bottom row, I think they were at. They've been quite hot, trying to make up ground in this American League East that we know every year stacked beyond the belief, and this year no exception. They're fourth in the division right now. But I think wild card is very much in the hopes, and that's why they're here. They've taken care of business, battled the Angels, got past them. So they're going to set their sights on the next couple of teams ahead of them. But right now, I consider it a little bit of a gap in the American League. We're going to start talking about some National League teams now. 13. We got the Philadelphia Phillies 3-0 against Milwaukee, 2-1 against Texas. They fired Joe Girardi this past weekend, or not this weekend, but like the past weekend. And they went on this winning streak beyond belief. I think they won 8, 7, 8, 9 in a row. It's hard to know, confusing them with the next team up, but Phillies, every time you want to discount them, they go on a streak. They've been 500 constantly, but I really think this team is capable of taking a step forward. They just need to put their foot on the gas. Hopefully Bryce Harper continues to have this all-star season that he's just having. He's been a monster for them. Number 12, about the San Francisco Giants, 1-2 against Colorado. They swept the Dodgers over the weekend, keeping them thick in this National League race. I'm just going to jump to it. Number 11. We got Atlanta Braves. 2-1 against Oakland. 4-0 against Pittsburgh. And I just wanted to put them up there because these three teams, they're all scrapping for essentially what's one playoff spot up for grabs. And it's tight at this point. Any team, 2 months, 3 months to go. Any team can go on a streak. Any team can completely fall out. Right now, I'm giving the edge to Atlanta. They won the World Series last year. But to me, they have solid rotation, a solid lineup all the way down. You could say the same thing about any of these teams, really. But I'm giving the edge to Atlanta, at least at this point. Number 10. We're just hitting the National League hard right now. 0-3 against Tampa, 2-1 against Cincy. And they barely squeaked out those wins against Cincy, so I had a little bit of concern there. But they did win. But after Luke getting swept early in the week against Tampa, the Cardinals are actually first in the division by half a game. Oh, it's going to be tight. And they got half a game lead on this Milwaukee Brewers team, who is 1-2 or 0-3 against Philly, and then 1-2 against Washington. They got one win, managed to snap a huge losing streak that they were on, but the damage was already done. They were up high at number 5 in power rankings, but damage was done. 9 losses in a row, I think it was, before sneaking out a win on Washington this week, losing the series to Washington. So we're looking at a playoff race here. One of these two teams guaranteed a playoff spot. We got these three teams fighting for one other spot. And then we're going to get up to even higher where one team is going to probably take the other wild card spot. So between these 5 teams, only 2 teams can make the playoffs, but only one of the 4. Like, that's what we're talking about here. So the National League playoffs, in my opinion, is pretty much set up. The race is set up, at least. We're not going to really see any teams get past here, get into the race. Mind you, the Marlins could, but I think at this point it's a pretty big stretch. But it's going to be a tight race. We're going to see it right down to the wire between all these teams. It's going to be exciting, guys. I can't wait for the playoffs. Number 8, Tampa Bay, 3-0 against St. Louis, 1-2 over the weekend against Minnesota. Tampa Bay just hangs around, and they take care of business. They're winning against solid teams like Milwaukee. They swept them. Part of the reason for Milwaukee's downfall. But they also lost to Minnesota, so they're kind of having trouble picking up big wins that they used to in the past. They used to be able to take wins off the Yankees all the time, the Jays and all that. It's a little bit of a struggle more this season. At this rate, we do kind of see them right there, thick in the playoff race. Again, 2 wildcard spots. It's going to be interesting. But, number 7. We go into Toronto Blue Jays, 2-1 against Kansas City, 2-1 against Detroit. They had an easier schedule this week, playing 2 of the American League Central teams. They took both series. Got to be excited about that. I'm sure they would have loved to see a sweep, but that's why we still see them on the second row. They haven't quite taken that step forward to be dominant yet this season. They've had stretch of being good, stretch of being bad, and they've been good. We want to see them take that next step to dominant. Number 6, Minnesota making their debut on the first row, 1-2 against the Yankees, 2-1 against Tampa. So a tough week for them, and they're really just rising to the test, rising to the occasion every week. And I think we got to give them some credit where credit's due. Minnesota, number 6, taking a win off the Yankees. Got to be good about that. Number 5, Houston Astros, 1-2 against Seattle, 2-1 against Miami. It's just kind of been, I'm still waiting for the Houston to just break out. They haven't really had a tough schedule out of all the teams in this top row. They've had the easiest schedule this season. So when we've seen them play a tough team like the Jays, they did lose. So I kind of want to see what they're going to be like when they play the Yankees, when they play the Tampa Bays, when they play these other teams in the top 10. Houston's got to be able to win some of those series if they're going to make their step up into the top 4. Number 4, we got the LA Dodgers 2-1 against the White Sox, getting swept by San Francisco. And while they had a pretty big lead, decent lead on the West at one point, it has now evaporated. They still technically hold it, but in my opinion, they're on the ropes, and I actually put this other team ahead of them right now. Number 3, we got the San Diego Padres. They've just played some good ball. 2-1 against the Mets, 2-2 against Colorado over the weekend. But the Padres have just been solidly playing 600, 700 baseball for a number of weeks now, and their pitching rotation's got to be lights out. Musgrove is having one hell of a season. So number 2, that's who I have right now. If I had to say who's going to win the division, I'd be saying the Padres. Number 2. We got the New York Mets holding on 1-2 against San Diego. They were on the road, so I'm not holding too much into that. 2-1 against the Angels, assuming that they hold the win tonight. Still going to hold on to number 2. That lead that they had in the division that was massive, it's starting to shrink, mind you, because Phillies and Atlanta both went on amazing hot streaks, and the Mets have been 500 over the last 10 games. This is going to be a real test. The Mets got to be able to hold off these charges of these two teams. If we see the Mets lose the lead they have and get to 1-2 game lead, I'll start to be concerned whether they can hold it the rest of the season. Number 1, and it's not even disputable at this point. I think this is 5-6 weeks in a row. 2-1 against Minnesota, and then they went 3-0 against the Cubs. The Yankees have just been amazing this season. Can't argue. What are you going to say? The Yankees are the best team in baseball. And this reason, if they're not number 1 on your power rankings, you're doing something wrong. Otherwise, guys, let me know what you guys think of these rankings, where you guys would switch some things up, etc., etc. Don't forget, like, subscribe, join the community, blah, 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 blah. And thanks for watching. Peace out.